just to kick off the workshop formally, hi everyone, I'm Jared, and I am your Blender workshop host for tonight. And this workshop is being hosted, as you know, by game devs at York University. And today, we will be making a simple low poly character in Blender, and he looks something like this. So, if you're familiar, he is a Servbot from the Mega Man Legends series of games, and I'll be teaching you how to make him in Blender in about an hour or so. And since this is not really very formal, if at any time you find that the instructions are unclear or you need some clarifications, you can just say, "Hey, I need. Can you please answer this question?" And I'll be more than happy to help you. So to start, uh, open Blender. Let's just create a new one here. Save. Then, not sure if my screen can be seen. Oh, I think post it. Okay, going live again. So start Blender up, and then we'll start with a new general file. So click this, and you should see this screen. So this is Blender, and on Blender, this is your viewport. There are a lot of things here actually, and don't worry, you don't need to know everything. In fact, I won't tell you about all of them, only the necessary parts, because they can be overwhelming, and to be honest, most of them are beyond the scope of our workshop. But in just to start, this is the workspace. So this is where you'll be doing most of your modeling, and you can just use your mouse wheel down to sort of zoom out, and then mouse wheel up to zoom in. And hey, you learned your first Blender control. So just mouse wheel down to zoom up, zoom out, and then mouse wheel in to zoom in. And but that's not exactly useful, right? Like we have to work around with the workspace to be able to do anything. And thankfully, Blender has these widgets on the upper right hand corner to tell us or to allow us to control the camera. And so you see this sort of widget here. You can just right, or you can left click and then hold, and that should allow you to rotate the viewport. So you should see the entire viewport just rotating. And if you were to click on one of the letters, X, it'll sort of freeze to that view. So now you're seeing it from the through the x-axis, and then the y-axis, and then the z-axis. So that's the top, and that's how you move around, sort of how you rotate the view in Blender. And to pan the view, what you do is you go to this hand widget and just again and hold left, right, and that should just allow you to pan the view. Oh, sometimes that happens. It's okay. It should just allow you to pan the view. And if ever you get lost, by the way, say you want to look at the cube, for example, just press, go to the object outline here. So say let's try to move that out of the way, and you're lost. Oh no, what do? Just go to the object outline, and then press. Wait, actually, I have an idea. So for you guys to see my sort of key bindings better, let's just open up something here. Edit preferences. Don't mind, this isn't part of the tutorial, by the way. Just screencast keys. So put that up here. And you guys should see all my key bindings. Can you see the, can anyone see the widget on the left-hand side?
Yeah, it's like in the bottom left corner.
Right, exactly. So let me
little mouse.
let me just increase that for everybody. That way you guys can see what I'm actually clicking. Does that look good?
Yeah.
Cool,
Is
cool,
that
cool.
built into Blender?
All right, so no. What's great about Blender, since it's an open source software, is that lots of people have been developing add-ons for it. And this screencast keys add-on is downloadable through GitHub. I could probably send a link to it after the workshop, but it's one useful way of actually showing people what you're clicking when you're in the Blender viewport. So, yeah. In any case, again, navigating through Blender, um, mouse wheel up to zoom in, mouse wheel down to zoom out, and when you want to rotate around an object, just use this widget. And when you want to pan the view, just left, right, click this hand view. Or if you don't want to use your mouse wheel, you can also do this, just zoom in and out. That should provide a much smoother zooming in and zooming out experience. That's pretty much the basics of moving around in Blender. There's really not much to it. Um, Again, if you want to focus on an object, you just either click the outline here in the upper right, or you click the object itself, and you press the period key, numpad dot, and that should allow you to focus on the object. All right, so you guys just learned how to move around Blender. Hooray! um, that's really the basics of just interacting with the viewport. And now I'll probably move on to showing you what the rest of the areas on the screen are as well. So here, as you can see in Blender, you have these different areas. This is your timeline, which is used for animation. Not really going to use that, so for this tutorial, we won't be needing it. What I want you to do is I want you to go to the sort of line here, the gray line that separates the viewport and the timeline. And when you see the cross, I want you to just left click and then just hold down. And you should see that it should darken the area beneath and then just let go. That way, you collapse the menu and you'll have like a full view of the viewport. Since we won't really need that, just get that out of the way. And then this area should be the settings, or the different kinds of properties that allow you to sort of work with Blender. And for now, we won't be going through all of them because there's just way too many. But I want everybody to go to the render properties here. It's kind of like this TV screen icon here. And then just check your render engine. It should be set to Eevee. If not, just go click this and then just set it to Eevee. That way, rendering would be faster because Blender uses different render engines and cycles is just very taxing on most machines. So for Eevee and the purposes of this workshop, Eevee should be good enough. All right. Is everybody okay? Let's just do a first checkup, see if everybody's okay. Everybody's sort of like confused or missing anything. Has anybody's Blender just absolutely exploded, or are we good to go? Good to move on to the next part of the workshop. Be cool?
I'm good to go.
Okay. All right. So now that we kind of know how to move around Blender, how do we actually interact with the objects in the viewport? Well, you can just click any object that you see in the viewport. Right now, if you started with a blank file, you should have a cube in the middle, a point light, and a camera. For our workshop, we wouldn't be needing this, so we'll just click on the light and then shift, click on the camera, and then just press X to delete. And that's how you delete objects in Blender. Just click them, and then X to delete. But Control Z, since we won't be deleting the main cube, just keep it there for a while. And so X to delete, and then Control Z to undo your action. Hey, there we go. New keybinds. It's keybind season. Anywho, Um, I guess one direction I'd like to take this workshop in is to teach you guys the fundamentals of thinking in 3D. So, some of you may be familiar with the donut tutorial where Andrew Price teaches you about all of the features in Blender, and it's kind of overwhelming. And while it's, I guess, a good tutorial to start with, and I started with it too, I feel like it doesn't really tackle uh, the important sort of aspects of creating anything in 3D. So to start, I'd like everyone to sort of just click on the cube and just delete it. We won't be needing that for now. And I'd like you guys to just click on the upper right corner here and then click the Y, just so we could sort of a front-faced orthographic view of the entire area. Now, um, click Shift, press Shift, then A, and then go to Image, and then Reference. And then I'd like you to navigate to where you downloaded the starter kit. And so you should see the when you go to the starter kit, you should see the Servbot worksheet or the Servbot reference sheet. I'd like you to click on that. And so when you click on that, it should appear here on Blender. And to interact with it, just click it again, like any other object, and then press S to scale, and then just move your mouse, just resize it. So when you move your mouse outwards, it goes larger, and if you move your mouse inwards, it goes smaller. I want you to sort of enlarge it a bit. Okay? And so with a model like this, where do we begin exactly? Well, you can see that our Servbot buddy here is made up of a couple of different shapes. He is a cylinder, and then kind of like a square thing, and then he has spheres for shoulders, and then more cylinders, and then this weird hook thingy that we don't really know anything about, and then kind of like a cylinder, and then a rectangle with a triangular kind of top, right? So the important thing to think about when making anything in 3D is to start with the basic shapes. And that's actually one way to think about character design in general. Um, First, we have to start with blocking out our character. And how would we go about that in Blender? Like, how do we actually start? So we know that this little guy here is made up of basic shapes. And thankfully, Blender um, allows us to already use or like modify their basic shapes without making anything from scratch. And so I'd like to teach you guys another hotkey. You click on the reference image here, press G, and then just while G is pressed, you tap X on your keyboard, and then just slide it to the left, like so. And that allows us to sort of just move it to the left. And now, maybe we should go for his head. And we know it's a cylinder, right? So let's press Shift A to go to the Add menu. And here, Blender allows us to actually choose which meshes we want to use. And so we're just gonna go to this first one here called Mesh, and then these, as you can see, are the basic shapes that Blender allows you to use. At least these are the most common shapes that we can use to create anything. And these shapes are actually super powerful because we can make anything out of them. We just have to know how to sort of modify them and to manipulate them. But for now, we're just concerned with the cylinder. So you should see that the cylinder has sort of spawned or like appeared in the middle of your file here, or the viewport. What I want you to do is you press S and then you press Z to scale along the Z axis, and then just move it inward. And then you press G and then Z, sort of move it up. And most of our interaction with objects in Blender will go mostly like this. It's just either G, Z, or G, X, or G, Y, and so on. Because really, that's the simplest way to really go about it. So it it takes a while to get a hang of, but as you can see, it's very intuitive. So press G, C, and if you're to see, you pretty much have his head. That's basically the basic shape of his head, and maybe a bit bigger, but we can always sort of just refer to the reference sheet. So maybe it's a bit flat at the top, right? Or we can compare that. So press G again, and then X, and then slide. So maybe we can compare it beside his head. To give us a clearer view of the comparison, press Y here, or click Y here at the widget. And here you can see that, oh look, it may be a bit too wide. So what we'll do is we'll press S again to scale, and then X to scale along the X-axis. So we can just sort of adjust it there. And maybe we want it to be a bit taller. So just press S again, and then Z to scale up or along the Z-axis. And what you have, or what you should have, is something that looks similar to his head. Voila. That's the first. Congratulations, you just made your first object in Blender. Woohoo! But this doesn't really help us much. I mean, come on, it's just a cylinder. Jared, you're lying to me. This isn't really something, right? Well, give it some time, because the more we layer or the more we add on to this like simple block out, the more it will start to make sense. So bear with me. But now, since we have a cylinder here, we'll always look back to our character sheet, by the way, just so we could track our progress. So now that you have his head, what else do you think is missing? Well, he sort of has this cylindrical thing again at the top, right? And that's easy. Since we already have a cylinder, we'll just have to sort of duplicate that, right? So what we can do is click the cylinder, and then you press Shift, hold Shift, and then you press D. That should duplicate. That should duplicate the cylinder. And don't click anything yet though. You press Z scale to sort of drag it along the Z axis. Again, let me just repeat that. So if you pressed it, it's okay. If you pressed click, that's okay. You can always just go here to the cylinder, G, and then Z. So in case you lose, quote unquote, lose anything, you can always just refer to the object outline here and Blender, and you'll always find it. So it's that. And then you press S, and this should just scale it sort of along itself. Just S, and then just move your mouse inward. And then, since we want it to be a bit tinier, moving on to the Y view again, just S, and then Z, and then scale it down to our liking. We move it down, and that should be it. That's his head. Hey. So now that we have his head, what else do we need? Well, his torso. His torso is sort of squarish thing that kind of tapers off at the top, right? So, thankfully, I mean, if you've seen it, Blender allows us to use a cube. So the hotkey for that again is Shift A, and then add, Shift A to add, and then mesh, then cube. And so that should spawn the cube in the middle. All we have to do is to press G to grab, and then Z to move it up along the Z axis. Since it's a bit too big, a bit too wide, we could just press S again, but we need to scale it along the Y axis. So let's press S and then Y. Just sort of scale it along there. Boop. And that roughly seems like what we're going for. Just press G again, but it's kind of like clipping with the head. And that should be his torso. It's a Roblox looking torso. So I kind of need to work with it a bit more. And so this is where the interesting part happens. Blender has two modes that allows you to interact with objects in the viewport. First is the object mode, which is this. It's basically just sort of like moving around, adding objects in, and that's cool. And then the next is the edit mode. But I just noticed that this is a bit too like sort of oblong or oval. So let's just adjust this. So S and then Y to make it look a bit more appropriate. It should be fine. So going back to the modes. So this is the object mode, the view that we're currently in. But to allow us to work with objects closer or to really modify them, we have to go into tab, which is the edit mode. So you can see it like change the viewport. So that's object mode and then press tab. That's edit mode. And what's cool about edit mode is that it allows you to sort of just interact with the individual vertices that comprise the shape that you're selecting. So you can see I'm just like modifying this. I'm just moving it around. It's okay. You can also play with it a bit, like what I'm doing here, because you can always just press Control Z and you'll always be back to where you were, right? And this will allow us to really, really get like closer details on our models. And so what we want right now is to sort of just taper it at the top, right? So what we want is to select these vertices. So select, click, then shift, hold shift, click, and then click again. Or to make it easier, just zoom out and then like hold left click on any empty part of the viewport and just drag it out to select the four vertices here. And because we want it to sort of like be thinner at the top, we have to scale it along which axis? The Y axis. So S, Y, scale along Y axis, and then just zoom in, sort of like scale in, and that should give us that scale. But we also know that this torso is way too big. So what we can do is sort of select the entire thing. Make sure you're selecting the entire thing, right? You should see that when you select vertices, the faces that are selected will be highlighted in orange. If it's not in orange, if it's not in orange, it means that the face isn't selected. So as you can see, we still have one vertex that is black here. And to just select that, we could hold shift and then select, and the entire torso should be selected. And so we're just gonna scale again, S, and then X to scale along the X axis, and then just shorten the torso as like so. Because we also want to be in this shape, just gonna scale along the Z axis, S and Z, scale, 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 move it up a bit, press G along Z, go up like this. And since we want to be meticulous, we really want to get the shape right. You could see if it's a bit too wide. At the top, it does seem too wide. So what we do is press GX just to adjust it a bit. And then we take the top again. So select, Shift S, hold Shift, and then just like left click. That should highlight the top. And so press S, and then X, and then that should allow us to just scale the top. And then to exit edit mode, we just press Tab. And we should be back to the object mode. Like so. Hey, there we go. You already have his torso, his head complete. We're actually already halfway through the tutorial or through the workshop, but there'll be more along the way. Just check up those. Everyone cool with their file? Anything that needs to be clarified? Anyone needs help with like I don't know, a missing object? Be good. Everyone cool? Let me know. In any case, we know that this is too tall, right? So we're just gonna scale up again, SZ. Again, I'm looking at my reference all the time. It's really important that you use a reference whenever you want to look at an object or like try to make an object. So press S, then Z, just scale it like that. Want it to be a bit shorter. S and then Z. Then you press G, then Z to just move it along here. Okay. So we have the head, we have the torso. What else can we do? Well, he has this sort of um hip part, then he has the legs, and then he has his arms. Right? So maybe we can go with the hip part first. The hip part looks a bit like a sphere, to me at least. It looks like a sphere that is a bit elongated. Like it's a bit elongated, so it's kind of like scaled along the x-axis. So we can do that. We can just press Shift A again to add a mesh, and then we can go to the mesh, and then just click this UV sphere. That should give us a sphere. So once again, I kind of feel like you guys already have an idea of where this is going. Press S to scale, scale down. And then, since it's a bit sort of smaller or like elongated, what we can do is we can again look at this and sort of just press S and Y to flatten it a bit, and then press S and Z, sort of just make it flatter at the top, and then press G and Z again to just move it up like that. If it's not to your liking because it's clipping here, you can always just adjust it. So just press S again and Y and adjust it until it looks a bit better. S, Y. Ta-da! And that should be his hip part. Let's just move it upwards a bit because it seems like it's not really it's clipping through the torso. That should be his hip part. So now the only things that are left to create for our character blocking are his legs, his arms, and of course his little spherical things here. And that's not hard. So what we can do is for the spherical parts on his torso, we could press again Shift A, mesh, and then UV sphere. Scale it down to what seems appropriate. Press S to scale down. Right? And if it seems like it's at the right shape, press G, then Z, and then move it to the appropriate part. So press G again, press Y, like so, press G, then X, boop, and that should be that looks fine, right? So we're gonna press Shift and D to duplicate. So that's Shift D, and then press X to move it along the X-axis, and that should be it. That's his spherical torso thingies. I think his buttons are like his decorative spheres. So I think this is clipping a bit. So we're just gonna press S and Y. So as you can see, as I go along, I'm sort of just adjusting things as I see fit, using just the basic controls that we learned earlier. And so now we can move on to the legs. And we know that his legs kind of look like cylinders, right? Kind of look like thin versions of his head. So all we have to do is press Shift A, add mesh, and then cylinder. Then to scale the cylinder, we click it, then S, let's scale down, right? And so to make the cylinder thinner without having to scale it down any further, because when we press S, it just goes larger, and then we just go smaller. It may not be exactly what we want. So what we can do is press S, and then hold Shift, and then Z. And what that does is that it allows us to scale on any other axis that isn't Z. So as you can see, it's making the rod or the cylinder thicker or thinner without having to scale it along the Z axis. So how that goes again is S, hold Shift, and then Z to scale it along the X and Y axes. All right. So we can just go to the Y view again, then press G, then X to move it along the X axis, then press G again, then scale to press Z to move it along the Z axis. All right. Is everyone cool, by the way? Anyone need help with anything? Like we can take sort of like if anyone's missing anything.
Yeah, maybe we should
here.
take a little break just so that anyone who's a little behind can catch up.
Sure.
Totally
Sure.
not me though. I'm right there with you for real.
All right.
Yeah, I'm
Okay.
not still making the
So
buttons.
if anyone would like to share the screen with like any help I could offer, by the way, since it's a workshop after all. Anyone like any help with their file? Or are we cool to go? It's cool, by the way. Or if in any case, I can always just continue. And then if there are any questions, please let me know. Also, yes, it is. I may if I went too fast, please let me know as well. We can always just go back and then repeat a few parts if that's cool with you guys.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So if there aren't much comments, we can move on. So now that we have the legs, or at least thin part, or like the first part of the legs, the rest is basically just cylinders, right? So what we can do is we can just duplicate the cylinder, like left click, and then press Shift and then D to duplicate, and then just scale it like this, as so. And we press G and then Z to go down, and that'll allow us to sort of just move the duplicated cylinder. Again, we can do that again. So just press X to delete, Shift D to duplicate, then Z to go down or go along the z-axis, and then just slide it down so that we have a leg. And scale, press S to scale, and then we can just scale it like so. And then sort of like make it shorter again. Well, actually, you know what? We don't need to make it shorter. There is actually a way for us to modify the shape so that it could give us this shape that we want, which is this sort of feet right here. And how could we go about that? Well, we could press tab again. So tab to go into edit mode, right? So tab to go into edit mode, and we should see the vertices that are on the cylinder. And how are we supposed to sort of like make that cut here, or like this shape? Because this part is obviously thicker than this part, right? So we need to find a way to actually like scale that part. And one way for us to do that is by having something like this, right? S to scale, S to scale. You can press right mouse, by the way, to like undo any like edits. So like while you're scaling the vertices and you're not clicking the left mouse button yet, you can just right click to undo anything. Or if you have, just press Control Z. So we need something like a loop cut like this to be able to modify this part of the legs, right? So for us to make a loop cut, what we can do is to, while we're in edit mode, we can press Control and then R, and you can see that a yellow sort of like highlight has appeared around the cylinder. And what that means is that we can make a loop cut there. So we just left click, and when you left click once, you should be able to sort of like move that loop cut around, right? And to confirm where you'll be placing that loop cut, you just click the left mouse button again. And so just to repeat, Control R to make a loop cut. Oh, where'd that go? Control R to make a loop cut, and then left click to adjust and move the loop cut around the cylinder, and then left click to confirm where the cylinder or where the loop cut will be placed on the cylinder. So now that we have a loop cut like halfway through, how are we going to make this shape? Well, if you can see, there's one sort of like, if you were to sort of imagine the cuts around here, like you can see there's a cut here at the top, there's a cut here in the middle, and then a cut here just below the cut in the middle. And we can work with that by adding another loop cut here. So we just press Control R. Make sure that your cursor is below this line, by the way. So we just press Y again, then Control R, and that should give us a loop cut underneath the midline. So let's do that again. So Control R, and make sure the sub object is, your cursor is on the object. Then click, and then click. So now that we have a loop cut here, let's form this shape, shall we? So just click this widget again to look around, and then to work or to sort of manipulate these vertices, just press Shift, then left click and hold till the box covers the vertices that you want. Make sure that all the vertices are covered around the object, And now that we have this entire area, what we can do is we just press S to scale, and then just move it like that. Hey, yo. Now we have one of his legs. That kind of looks like one of his legs, right? I mean, it's similar. So what we can do is we can adjust it even more. Just again, click get this, and then make sure the entire thing is selected all around the object. If you accidentally select vertices, just Control Z, and then try again. Control Z and try again. And that should select the outer ring. Or you could, to select an entire group of vertices, just hold Alt and then left click. So just Alt and then left click. That should allow you to select an entire like string of vertices. How do we do it again? We just press Alt, left click, Alt, left click. So since we want to sort of adjust it to be a bit lower, press G, then Z, and that should give us kind of the look that we want. All right. We have his leg done. So what we do is to duplicate, or to sort of like, again, make a copy of the object. We just click the objects that we want, which is this leg right here, and then this feet part right here, and then press Shift, and then D to duplicate. So that's Control Z again. Let's try that again. Let's click, click, Shift to Shift D to duplicate, and then X to move along the X-axis. Just we smooth it kind of like here to the right. If it looks a bit weird, what we can do is we can just press adjust the parts as we need. So we press G, then X, and then press S, and then X. We're really just pressing like hotkeys all over, like S to scale, and then X to sort of like, and the axis that we want to scale it along, X and X, scale it along here. And that should give us a sort of similar look to what we have here. Can just move this a bit, I guess. G to X, G to X. All right, now we have his legs, his torso, and pretty much his entire body now, except for the arms, of course. But we're getting there. Once again, if people need to clarify, if I need to slow down a bit and then go back, let me know. I'd be more than happy to do so. Right, so now that we have his sort of like general form here, so you can see it's sort of like coming together now. What we need is his arms. So, since we know that these are just these ball thingies, these shoulders, oh, just go there. These shoulders are just spheres. This is just a cylinder, and then this is just a cylinder, and whatever this shape is, we'll get to that. But we know that this is basically the basic structure of his body. It's just basic shapes. It's just a sphere, cylinder, a cube, and then more cylinders, and then more cylinders, and more spheres. And this is super powerful. Just really allows us to create a character with just basic shapes. We don't even have to modify much. We just need to know how to manipulate Blender's basic shapes. And so now we can start with his arm, or at least one of them. Again, to add an object, we press Shift A to add a mesh, and then UV sphere to add a sphere. And then to scale, we press S, and then we drag it down to size, and then press G, then Z to move along the Z-axis, to grab the object along the Z-axis. Then we press G again, and then X to grab along the X-axis. And that should kind of give us just his shoulders. Now we should move on to the next part of his arm, which is his actual kind of like bicep, I guess, bicep part. And we'll move on to Shift A, mesh, add another cylinder, scale again, then grab along the Z-axis, so that's G, Z, and then G, X, and then scale it down. Let's just move it like that. And then, because we want it to be this tall, we don't want it to be any shorter, we just want it to be thinner, we press S to scale, and then Shift, hold Shift, and then Z, so that we could just make it thinner. So that would scale it along the X and Y axes without having to affect the Z axis. Again, that's S, then Shift and Z to scale it along the X and Y axis. So we just want it to be this thin. Okay, his arm's looking pretty cool. We just need to make this part and then his very scary looking claw part. But we'll get to that. Right, so to make another cylinder, just click the object and then press Shift and then D, and that will allow us to, oh, let me Control Z again, my bad, Shift D, and then tap Z to move it along the Z axis. Right, so we're sort of like adjusting it near there, and then to scale, we just press S, so, and because it's too long, we just scale it again, press S, and then Z to scale it along the Z axis until it's the desired length, like so. So as you can see, like, this is just the general workflow for Blender. Like, you have a shape, want to adjust it, press S to scale, and then if it just, the positioning is a bit off, press G, and then Z to scale it up or down. Or you could even just not even use the axes. You could just use G and then just move it like that. But in any case, it's just much easier to work with the axes. And that's just the general workflow for Blender. You just press G, Z, GX, GY. You can see, but like it's moving forward and backward. So we can just Control Z to move it back to where it was. Nice. So now we have his sort of like forearm thing here. It's a bit too thin, so maybe I'm just gonna like press S again, and then press Shift and Z. So that would like allow us to scale, make it a bit thicker, and that should be fine, just subtly. Okay. Now we could check sort of form our character has. Yep, it's looking pretty decent. If there are things that look off, don't be afraid to try. Just like press S, scale, and just press right click to just not apply the scaling. Press S again, just, and then right click. Just adjust based on what you see, and if you like it, just, it's okay, go ham. Like, just press Control Z if you make a mistake. It's, Blender is very beginner friendly. It just takes some getting used to when you're working with hotkeys. But in any case, let's go back to the arm. So now that we have his arm, I think we've pretty much used up all the basic shapes we have. I mean, look at this, Shift A, add mesh. We have a plane, we have a cube, we have a circle, we have a UV sphere, which is just our general sphere. And then we have an icosphere, which is a lower poly sphere. Not really going to use that here. Then we have a cylinder, or the cone. We have a torus, and then these weird name things that we're not really gonna use. There's a monkey apparently, but we don't care about that. So we've used up all of our basic shapes, and now I think you're probably telling me, "Oh, you're lying to me." Like this, what is this? This is not a basic shape. It's kind of like a half moon thing, and maybe like a half cylinder. I don't know. How are we actually gonna create that shape? Well, if you think about it, right? Like this part is kind of just like a bent rectangle. It's like a bent rectangle. Like given a rectangle, like oh, don't follow this part by the way. I'm just gonna do this for demonstration purposes. So press GX to move it along. And it's kind of like just like a really weird like curved rectangle thingy. There's actually a way for us to do that in Blender. So what we can do is we just press X to like delete this cube. And so what we can do is just I want you guys to highlight everything here. So you've highlighted everything in the viewport, and then press G and then just Z to like move it down here. Like just move it down here for a while, right? Now that we've moved everything down, we can now start working on this shape here. Remember when I said this is just a bent rectangle? Well, how do we make a rectangle? We just, well, it's kind of like a cube, right? So we just Shift A, mesh, add a cube. Cool. So how would we work with this cube exactly? Well, to elongate it, right, all we have to do is press S and then X, sort of like turn it into a rectangle. That works. It's kind of like a weird rectangle thing, but that's not what we're gonna do. So just Control Z, or you can just press X and then Shift A, mesh, and then a cube to get another cube. So what I want you guys to do is press G or click your cube, press G, then X, and I want you to move it just a lightly to the left. So be like just that, maybe 2 square grid spaces in between. If you go to the top view and you have your 3D cursor here, right? You have your 3D cursor here. I just want you to move it like a couple of spaces here, maybe like a cube, like that. So now that we have that, we can go into edit mode. And in edit mode, we have these tools here that will allow us to sort of just work with any object in Blender. And there's something like extrude, there's inset, there's bevel, so loop cuts, which we've done earlier. So it's also here. And these are just simple like shape operations that we can use. So how would we be able to like create that like bent rectangular shape? Well, I'd like you to click this button that says spin. So just go to tab, and then press spin. And if you can see, this like blue line should pop up, right? And that's along the z-axis. So let's just try. Let's see what that does. Just click. So we just adjust the view till we can get a clearer view of the cube, and then we just press Z. Whoa, that is a weird looking shape. I mean, is that exactly what we want? Not really, but we're close. So we just press Control Z since it's not what we want. Control Z twice. And so what we actually want is to click here. So go to the top left. You can see that there's different options. Just vertex select. This mode allows us to manipulate specific vertices. Clicking this, called edge select, will allow us to manipulate different edges. So it kind of just changes which we manipulate. What we want is here, face select. And face select will allow us to sort of work with just full on faces. So that goes face select, edge select, and then vertex select. We want face select. So we want to click this face, go to face select, click this face, and then what we want is to click here, the Y. And this should allow us to properly curve this face to the shape that we want, like so. And like I told you, it's kind of just like a bent rectangle or maybe a curved square. Who knows? But it's kind of like a hook thing. And this spin tool allows us to extend our object along a certain arc. So now that we have it, we can just press just look at it again. Is it does it look exactly like it is in the picture? No. We can see that this edge right here is like kind of like tapered upwards, or it's kind of just it's in a weird angle. So what we can do is go to the vertex select and just rotate around the object to adjust, and then highlight the vertices here. And that should allow us to just press G again, then press Z to allow us to flatten the shape. We can just also do this just because we're a bit meticulous. And that should give us, when you press tab, that should give us the hands that we kind of are looking to work with. And that should be sort of like a summary of how to make that hand. Now we have the first part. How could we make the second part? Well, we just duplicate Shift D, press Z, then just press G again, then Z. That. And to have it facing or to rotate the object, you press R and then X to rotate along the X axis, and then we press 180. And that should allow us to just.
Sorry to interrupt, but
Sure.
make sure you save your project. I just realized I have not saved my project this entire time. We've been here for like an hour. Make sure you save your stuff,
Okay,
everyone.
that is that is a very good point, guys. So to save your projects, Ashley did not think of that, by the way. Thank you so much, because even I forget. So to save your project, file, save as, and then just save it here. So let's just say GDYU workshop dot blend. I'm so sorry, by the way. If I could actually like update the take like a 1 minute break, and I'll just update the folder with this part of the project done so that everyone could like download it, and in the case that you know their workshop file was just deleted. But let me just get to that. So documents, I'll be uploading that now. GDYU workshop. Where did I save it? Save as. It's in documents, right? Okay, documents. How we doing so far, everyone? Let me know if we're not doing too hot. That's cool with me. Servbot GDYU workshop. And if you're lost, by the way, I've just uploaded the dot blend of like this current part of the workshop so that you could follow along as well. So just download that now, and we'll give it like a minute to get everyone up to speed. Let me know when you've downloaded it, Jaden, by the way. Just so we could have you as
The
reference.
updated. Oh, the updated version.
Yeah, it's called no. This part of the workshop has now been uploaded to the Google Drive.
Is it just called GDYU Workshop?
Yes.
Okay,
I'm very bad with naming schemes. I'm so sorry.
no problem.
GDYU workshop.blend.
Yeah.
And that should take you to this part of the workshop. No worries, no worries. We're good. We're good. Hey, Emmanuel. Good evening.
Stop.
Oh, you could go to by the way, Manuel, since you just came in, hi. You could go to the announcements channel and then read my announcement there. I have a Google Drive link that includes the current part of the workshop right now, which is called GDYU Workshop Blend. If you still want to follow along, we're halfway through the workshop now, so it's cool. It's cool. You can still follow along, and it'll take like a minute or so until Jaden finishes
Yep,
getting it
it's all
up.
downloaded. I just downloaded it so I could take the claw because that's the part I was a little behind on.
Oh, the what? The clock?
Yeah, the claws, like the hands.
Oh, the claws. Right, right.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, the claws are like they were a super hard thing to get at first, like for me. So like I
Mhm.
actually had to do like multiple like tutorials, but assume that everything I know here is just done through tutorials. So I could also recommend you guys tutorials, and then we can look at some cool stuff together near the end of the workshop, just to like sort of expose you to what you can do with like some Blender basics. Um,
Could we have also done it by like making a cylinder and then putting a smaller cylinder inside of it and then subtracting and then like making a cut?
oh yeah, definitely we could do that. Yeah. Thing is though, like there are lots of like different ways we can go about it, right? So
Yeah,
like
that's
we
just the
could
first thing that popped in my head
exactly we could
when I
try
saw
that.
them.
So like we have cylinder, right? It's just GY again, and then R X 90, and then press S. Maybe you could do what you tried. Thing is with cylinders, the reason I hate working with cylinders is that the way they're like set up, like the way they're like their vertices are, it just gets way too complicated. So if I like, how would I have this knowing that like if I try to delete these vertices, right? It would just like create an entire hole, or like I could probably like try to subtract another cylinder in between. But that would just cause like a lot of that would cause a lot of morphology issues with the mesh, and that could be like more troublesome for us because again, this part is just like this part has no vertices, right? So if we were to subtract
Hmm.
it, it'll just kind of like delete the entire thing, and Blender sucks with that. So this is like one of the I guess quote unquote easier ways to do it if you um want to avoid any headaches. But I agree though that there are a lot of different ways to like do things. So feel free to experiment. By the way, if you have any ideas of how to like create something else, or this hook part too, that'd be awesome. So going back to the workshop, hopefully everybody's sort of like caught up with the file.
Huh?
Um, we could now like sort of put these claws together. So press G for this bottom claw, G, then Z.
Yeah.
We can see that, okay, so maybe they're a bit too close, right? What we can do is press tab, I'll click this, then press tab. And again, we could just go here to the vertex select, upper left, and then just select this part, this top part, just so we can make it like a bit lower. And we press G, then Z, like so, to just scale it down. And then same with here, press tab, select these vertices, make sure you're pressing shift if you're having trouble, or you just sort of drag your mouse. Press G, let me press G, then Z, boop, and adjust it based on our liking. So G, Z, and hell yeah, we have a claw, guys. Whoopee. If you've made it this part of the tutorial so far, I applaud you. This has been very confusing, but great job. And if you haven't, that's okay, because I was also I mean, I was in that position too, like at some point.
I
So in
think you're
any
doing a
case,
great job.
thank you,
Yeah,
thank
I'm
you,
learning so much.
thank you, thank you. Hopefully, um, but in any case, you can always download like the starter file. So I mean the file that we just uploaded. So you could always follow that, right? And I guess as we progress through the workshop, I'll also still be uploading the versions so that nobody gets left behind. So now that we have this, we're kind of just putting them together. G, Z, and since we don't really want to like work with too many parts, we can just press click this first one, and then click this again, and then press Control, hold Control, and then J to join them together. And now we have one solid claw. Ain't that amazing? Right? One solid claw. And then we can just sort of like S again to scale, 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 scale. And then adjust it to our model. Press G to scale to move along the x-axis, G, then Z, and then just kind of just move that G, Y, and then R again, and then X, or I'm sorry, R, then Y, move that again, R, then Y to rotate along the Y-axis. So just a recap of all our keybinds, or the important keybinds in this workshop so far. There's S to scale, there's G to grab, and then there's R to rotate. And what we're doing here right now is rotating along the Y-axis, so that's R, Y. And so to just, again, scale, press S, and then we just, sorry, S, and we just scale, and we should have what we what we believe, what looks like a claw. Just adjust it like that. Just zoom in. Again, to focus on one object, make sure it's highlighted in the viewport. Click, and then press dot. And it should sort of like zoom in towards that object. So G again to grab, Z to move up. And there you have it. You have his claw. Huzzah! But like, it's a bit too thin, so let's just press S and X to like make it a bit thicker. Oh no, S and Y rather. Sorry. S and Y to make it a bit thicker, and we should have his claw. Cute. Now, there's one more detail that we forgot, and it's this cylinder in the middle. And you know where this is going, guys. You know where this is going. So we just create a new cylinder, or if you want, if you're too lazy, you can just duplicate one from any of these parts and just press Shift A, cylinder, then G, then Z. Okay. Scale, 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 scale it down. Then G and X to move it to the side. Then scale it down again. And then how do we rotate? R to rotate. And since we wanted to like rotate around, rotate towards us, you have to rotate around the x-axis. So that's this is RX to rotate. Just adjust it so that's facing towards you. And then G again to grab. Then Z to go down. And since it's too big, what do? We just scale it down with S. Like so. Since it's a bit too short, we just press S again. And then we scale it towards us, since we know that at this top part here, it's the Y. It's Y's towards us. So we just press S, then Y, scale it towards the Y axis. And you should have his full arm. Like so. Hooray. So we have his arm, and to complete his entire torso, actually, is this the fun part for me. It's when I actually complete an entire blocking. I just duplicate this last part, his entire arm, or again, you can just drag, hold, oops. If you select something wrong, just click here again. Just select this entire arm, then Shift D, and then don't click anything yet. X, and then here to just move it, slide it to the right. And there you have it. We have his full torso. And since we're at this part of the tutorial, I'll be uploading this too. So that's GDYU workshop, right? I'll just be uploading this. Huzzah. Uh, very proud of us. Look at us, guys. We've completed basically a low poly blocking of a video game character. In the olden days, this would have taken them like a month. This took us maybe roughly an hour. So well done, guys. Um, I'll just upload this part to the starter file. So I'll name this GDYU workshop. What's a proper name? Finished blocking. To say finished blocking. Upload it so that everyone else can play with it and catch up to the next part. So, does anyone have any questions so far? Even if it's not about the workshop, just about life in general, like why are we here? Just to suffer? I don't know. I could try answering that too, maybe.
I think you're doing a great job.
Thank you.
Yeah, I thought the way we made the claw was pretty interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It is. It is pretty interesting actually. Like I definitely would not have thought about it had it not been for like the one tutorial that I saw. So if anyone would love to like again, so like the general how I learned Blender was that I was like, okay, I want to make this shape. Like how could I make that shape? And I just type it up on YouTube. How to make claw in Blender. And they should most of the time there'd be tutorials on it. And that's how I feel like is also one useful way or one useful tip for people who want to get into Blender is to just look up ways to do things in general. Like look up ways to do things. There's no harm in that. Like that's how you learn, right? And so this starter file should now be uploaded to the starter. This file should now be uploaded to the starter kit, so you guys can like download and then catch up. So I'm gonna give you like 30 seconds more until we move on to the next part, which is adding on some details to our character and then quickly texturing him. That's 30 seconds. And while we're doing that, we just kind of look around, see if like, we missed anything, or if there's something we can adjust. It's always fine. All right, that should be enough time. You've got 40 minutes to go, and that should be. We should finish in time. Actually, I'm surprised. Uh, we're making time. So, now that we have the character, or at least his sort of low poly model here, what details are we missing? Details. So after you finish the character blocking and you're satisfied with the general look of your character, that's when you add details. And what details can we add? Well, based on what I can see from a reference.
Sorry.
Oh,
Where
sorry.
is the updated finished file?
Oh, it's in the starter. It's in the drive. So it's GDYU workshop finished blocking dot blend. So I'm gonna like.
I did. Do you want to double check if you uploaded it? Because I don't see it.
Okay, sure. Let me just
No
check that.
problem.
Thanks for pointing that out, by the way, Jaden.
Of course, no problem, King.
You too, King. Anything for you. Okay, so I'm just gonna copy that link and then paste it to the. Is there like a chat here? Or I'm just gonna no mic. I'm just gonna put no mic. Okay, so in the no mic channel, I put the link to the dot blend there. And I'm just gonna give like people a couple of seconds to download that because it's very important everyone gets to at least do something. You know
Even
yeah. Sorry.
sorry, like even if you're missing a part of the bot, you can just take whatever part you're missing from the final version and put it back in yours.
Yeah, true. That's also one thing you can do.
Yeah, if you just like copy it and then close the file, then just open your file and paste it, it'll show up.
Yeah, that works too. That works too. Actually, you know the funny part is, like, I got into Blender because I wanted to get into game dev, but like I was learning to program, right? And I was following this like one tutorial like how to create a rocket game in Unity. I was like, wow, it's like so nice. But then the rocket looked like ass. So I was like, wait, how do I make the rocket look better? And then I just fell into the rabbit hole of like trying to look like trying to make good looking 3D models, and then that's how I learned. And it's been I think 3 years since then. Crazy. Okay, in any case, back to the workshop. So now that I assume everybody's caught up to speed with the file, right? Adding details. What do we see is missing, or what else could we do? Well, for starters, he looks too blocky, right? Like, come on, like make him look at least like smoother, right? And thankfully, there's a way for us to easily do that. So what I'd like everyone to do is to left click and then hold to select. Left click and hold everything. So like there, everything is selected. Make sure, except for the reference, of course. Just make sure everything is selected with your model, right? And then go to this part of go to this part of the viewport, the menu, and then I'd like everyone to click at the object data properties, object data, then the normals tab, and in the normals tab, click auto smooth. So what did that do? That did nothing, right? That did nothing. Well, again, repeating for the people who kind of who did not catch up with um, the instructions. So go to the normal tab, which is this green triangle, and then normals, and then auto smooth. So what does that do? It when we select our object, press right click, then shade smooth, it would it should actually allow us to like make our object look smoother. And that's just one neat way of kind of like making your object, a low poly object in Blender, look relatively smooth. You can see that's that. And now that he's smoother, well, how would we be able to make the general sort of like shape look smoother? This is in real life, you won't be able to see this. It's kind of like just one edge and then it just drops off. It has to be like smoother somehow, right? Like we have when you have a cylinder, like it should look somewhat smooth at the edge here. So how could we add that? Well, what we could do is add bevels. So now that we're again editing the cylinder, we press tab and we go to the vertex select. So let's click this, press Alt, then click the top ring, and then press Alt and click the bottom ring. Oh, you have to click Alt, then bottom ring. Then while holding Alt, you press Shift and then top ring. Right? Okay. So now we press Control and then D to bevel. Oh wait, my bad, my mistake. Right click. So see, when you press right click, it just kind of deletes stuff. I should do it one at a time then. We press, again, an empty space here in the viewport. So Control Z if you made a mistake. And then Alt, click here, and then Control B. to just bevel this. And that should make our cylinder look smoother. Ta-da! We have a smooth looking cylinder head. Now we do that for the bottom. Press again, Alt, and click the bottom to select all the vertices, and then Control B. And we just adjust that there. That should be enough, like just slightly. Again, Control Z if you make a mistake, and Control B to bevel. And that should give us a smoother looking head and a smoother looking model. And if you're extra or you really want to take a lot of time, you could do that for all of the cylinders actually. You just bevel this part and then bevel this part to just generally make it look smoother, you know, to make it look as if it's like an actual like cylindrical thing that we can use in real life, like, because in general, right, like nothing is just single edged. Everything is smooth, even the sharp ones, right, to some extent. And that's how we generally just soften edges in Blender. We press, we just uh, select all the vertices in an edge, and then Control B to bevel. And so that's how we get smoother looking edges. And now we're pretty much done with the base model of our Servbot here. So what we can do now is just Control S to save. Again, saving is very important. Saving is very important. And we just, now that we have our base model, it's actually time for us to move on to the textures. And it's actually just right on time. Now that we have the base model, we can move on to the textures. And Blender's material system, or its texture system, is very complex. I will not be covering everything here, but I will just cover what's necessary. So I'd like to draw everyone's attention to this part of the menu, just the material properties. And this pane, the material pane, should allow us to interact with the material system in Blender. So when you click an object, right now, none of them really have any materials, right? But we can do that. Let's say, go with the head first. Let's click the head, and then, of course, while we're in the material properties, right? Press New to create a new material. And as you can see, it doesn't really do anything. Like, where's the material now? That's because we are in the solid view mode. But if you all press Z, see, that should pop up like this sort of pop-up menu. This should give us a pop-up menu. And there's solid, there's rendered, there's wireframe, and material preview. I'd like to draw everyone to the material preview tab. And as you can see, this kind of changed the look of our model. It's now a solid white, but we're only interested in the head first. So we click the head.
Sorry, how did you apply the auto smoothing?
Auto smoothing. Okay, so let's just go back,
Yeah.
right?
My bad.
So no, it's okay. It's okay. So again, we go to the object data properties, right? Go to the normals tab, and then press auto smooth. And when you highlight your object, you right click shade smooth. That should apply the smoothing to your model. That should make it just look a bit cleaner. So
Okay,
that's,
thank you.
again, yeah, for you guys, just go to the object data properties, this green triangle, normals tab, then auto smooth. Click this so you can see the difference in the cylinder here. It's just auto smooth. It's just smoothing everything. Click that and then right click, shade smooth. It should apply it to your model where applicable. Now, back to the materials. So we're interested in changing the color of this model to something more appropriate. So what we can do is you just go to the base color here, And then just when you click the base color, like a color wheel should pop up. Just try turning it something yellow. Something. Ah, that's too gross. Yeah, this is fine. So now you can see that the color of our model has significantly changed. Significantly changed. It's just yellow now, and we're getting closer to what we want to achieve. And that's basically the same thing for every part of our model here. Just click this, add new, and then go to base color, and then just turn it into the color that you want. See, if we want to make it gray, you're already at white, so just scroll down to make it gray, and you can make a gray colored top of the head. And we'll be doing the same thing for the rest of the parts. So we'll click this, add new, and then go get a blue color, something that's a bit lighter, maybe this, that should be fine. And then since if we look at our model, right, our model shares a lot of the same colors. Like we don't have to sort of like just keep clicking and adding things. I mean, we could do that, but that's too time consuming. But since they share the same colors, why don't we just use the colors that we've already created and put them on other parts of our model? And we can do that. So we click a model, right? We click a part of our model that has no material yet. Go to this tab that's just right beside the new button, browse material to be linked. And then with the material you've created, it shows you all the materials you've created. So you see this gray material over here? We use that for this, for the top of the head. So we just click that again. Bam. It's created a gray, sort of like grayish or blackish material that we have. It's right here. Or wait, was that for, I think that's too dark. So maybe it's this. Is it that? No, yeah, it's exactly this. My bad. So we've created this grayish material here. And we can do the same thing for the rest of our object. So now we have the shoulder here, right? Just click the object, click browse material to be linked, and then just click the color that you want. And I'll just apply it again. So you don't have to keep creating new ones. If your object shares color schemes or like has different color schemes, and there are similar ones for each part, you could just go to the object, click browse material to be linked, and just click that. So now we can move on to the rest of our object. So this part of the object is a bit bluer. So we just create new, then base color, and then drag it to a color that we think is appropriate. Maybe like this. I don't know. Blue. Blue maybe. This blue looks okay. And that looks fine. That should be okay. Or maybe not. I'm a bit bothered by it. um that should look fine. That should be fine. This blue should be fine. Okay, so now, you can also move on to this. Browse material to be linked, blue. Browse material to be linked, blue. And then for this part, the hip part is just similar to the shoulders based on a reference. So we just click this, and then, of course, the shoulder color. And then the legs, again, are just metallic. So metallic, then metallic. And the hands are just the same color as the head. So yellow, then yellow, and then yellow for the really small cylindrical bolts there. There we go. We have we're almost done actually with the materials. Again, same thing, click the object, press browse material to be linked, yellow, browse material to be linked, yellow, and that should allow us to just create materials for our object. But what about this part? When you want to create this object, right? I mean, like when you want to color this object and you press OK, same color. Whoa. What about this part? Like I want this part to be the same color as the shoulders, but this entire thing is taking up just one color. Well, we can do that for actually do it. We can just assign like different parts of our mesh with different colors. And how we're going to do that is by going to edit mode. So we click this boot or this foot. I don't know what to call it. We click this foot and then press tab. And we go to the upper left to click face select. So we are face select mode now. You see that it changed. And we just want to select, well, which part do we want to assign this color to? Well, this part, right? So we just press Alt and then click to select this entire row of faces. Once again, that's Alt, then left click. Alt, then left click. So we've clicked that entire row. Now, I want to draw your attention to the materials panel. Click the add material slot here. Add material. That should sort of like open up a new blank layer here. And then in the browse materials to be linked tab, just go to the material that you want, which is the lighter blue color. And now that we have that selected and this selected, what we could do is we could press assign to this part of the mesh. And that should give us the same color as this part. And once again, I'm redoing it.
Sorry,
And
how did you select the entire
okay.
ring of the leg mesh there?
Yeah, of leg mesh. Okay, so what we do is we press Alt, hold Alt, and then left click.
Left click.
Alt and left click. If it
Oh,
doesn't
okay, I
work,
got it.
if it doesn't
Yeah.
work, you should probably like try clicking the ones in between. That usually helps. But yeah, or if the key binding really isn't working for you, just like select shift, shift select until you get everything.
You could also like make it transparent and then like highlight over all the ones from the back as well, right?
Yeah, you could also do that. Yeah. Though I won't be teaching that. Just like so because people might get confused. Like it does get confusing sometimes when you're working with transparent parts of the mesh. But like
So how do you apply materials to specific parts of the mesh?
right. So right now that you have this selected, okay, I'm gonna redo that, right? So I'm gonna remove the material slot. Redo that again. So we select this part with edit mode, tab, edit mode, and click, and then add a material slot, which should add a material slot. And then we go to browse materials, right? Browse material to be linked. Go to the material that you want, left click. It should now be in the slot that you created. And then we press assign. Voila. And that should be our new foot. And we could do that for this foot, but like we're too lazy, so we're just gonna delete that. Delete. And then left click on this foot. And then shift D to duplicate. And that should have our material already set for us. And there you have it. You have a Servbot with most of its colors just intact. And we even have just 20 minutes to go. Perfect. So in these last 20 minutes, it will go a bit faster because this is, I think, a bit more advanced. Working with materials in Blender. But you don't have to, I guess, sort of like fully grasp everything. You just have to follow along for now. So now that we have this, now that we have our character here, how can we give him the face? And that's the thing, right? Like how can we use this material and then add a face onto it? And there's another feature with Blender's material system that allows us to really manipulate the materials within Blender. So what I want everyone to do is go to the shading tab right here. Go up here, you see there are different tabs. Go to shading, right? And if it's not looking at your character, just move the view, then rotate. So it's looking at your character, or you press again, like the numpad period button to focus on the part that you're selecting. And so now that you're now in the shader view, and as you can see, the shader view is completely different from the modeling view. And what the shader view does is that it shows us the different kinds of nodes that comprise your materials. So the materials in Blender work based on nodes. If you're familiar, it's kind of like graphical programming, where there's an input material, and an output. So what Blender does is that it takes this input, which is this color, this base color, and then does some math to make it look yellow. For now, we're not really going to go into any advanced stuff. We just want to put a face on him, right? So what we do is we drag this up a bit just to give us a bit of like clearance. And to allow us to zoom in, we just, again, mouse in. And to sort of like move around, we click on the middle mouse button. Just hold middle mouse button. I'm not sure if there's a way for us to move without that, but in any case, just make sure you can like move around with the middle mouse button. I'm not sure if there's any other way we can actually move around with this. It's very finicky, so just use the middle mouse button like this, like so. Zoom in, zoom out, middle mouse. And with this, we can actually um, we can create another node. This is basically the main node, the principled BSDF. You don't have to understand what that is for now. Just know that it's the main node that allows us to control different parts of our texture. So here we have the roughness value. We can slide that down, and then to allow you to see it, like look, it's smoother when you turn the roughness down. It's a bit less smooth when you turn the roughness up. You could also make it metallic. So when you turn it all the way, it'll look like, sheet of metal. If you turn it down, yeah, so on and so forth. Like it changes your material basically. But we don't need any of that. We just need to put the face in. So how do we put the face? We Shift A, and here we're given so all sorts of options for our node or our nodes. We're only concerned with texture and then image texture. So this image texture should allow us to open up a file. And I want everyone to navigate to the Servbot face here, servbotface.png. And this Servbot face, what we're going to do is we're going to connect it to here, another node called the Shift A, and then I believe it's transparent BSDF. No, I think it's diffuse. Diffuse BSDF. Color, roughness. Okay. It's not transparent, but input, texture coordinate. Let me just remember which one it was. I think it was a shader. Transparent, diffuse, transparent, color. Wait. Let me just try to remember which one it was. Okay, so we're gonna save the file. I'm gonna look through the one that I finished, which was Servbot finished. Give me a second here, folks. And so the texture should appear. Oh, it's a mix shader. So we can do a Shift A, press this, search. So Shift A, search. And in the search bar, we type mix. And when we see mix, we should click mix shader. And so this mix shader should allow us to mix this image texture with this base material. So how can we do that? Well, the node thingy is a bit confusing, but if we have, say, a PNG, a transparent PNG, what we can do is we can put the alpha of the PNG here, and then we can put the base color here, and then the base color here. I think just mix them both. Make sure that this color is at the bottom and this one is at the top. And when we connect them here, should allow us to, oh, as you can see, it's already applied there. It should allow us to put that Servbot face or that face on top of our color. So again, connect the alpha to the facularity, which is FAC, color to shader, and then BSDF to shader. And then this part is shader to the surface material output. And that should give us this weird looking eye thingy. So it's applied, but we need to make sure that it's applied properly. So for these two, instead of having them share a material, what we can do is we can create another one. Create another one just for them. So new, base color, and then using this, we just create a new material that looks similar to that. Be this color. And again, how do we apply the material to this like a similar object? Just click the material, then browse, and then go to material 05, which is the latest one you created. So now that it's applied, how do we sort of like adjust it? And the way we adjust image textures in Blender is by going to the UV editing tab. So go up here to the UV editing, and then you should see another another layout in Blender. And this is also different, but not too different. Just follow along. And what we can do is we can select this entire head. And this left area is showing us basically how the head or how Blender is reading the outline of the head in relative to the image that we uploaded. So you can see this part of the head, these vertices here, these faces, they're all emulating or sort of like uh they're all they all correlate to the faces that you're selecting, right? So if we select all the faces on this head, for example, make sure, by the way, this head is selected. We select, left click, and then press tab. And you should see that this entire face is just sort of um, correlated with this area of the image. Like it's just cutting out. So how can we adjust that? Well, what we can do is you can press A to select all, and then just scale it up. S, scale, 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 scale. And oh, look at that. It's kind of like adjusting as we go along. And so as we scale up, we press S, and then we can press G to grab the entire like vertices or UV map, and then press Y to go down. And from here we can just keep adjusting it. Like press S to scale. If it looks a bit weird, a bit warped along the x-axis, we just press S, X, that, so, until we get it right. SY, SY, SX. This looks a bit too weird. So what we can do is we go back to the shading tab. From shading, we go to we go to the image texture, click linear, click repeat to clip, and that should allow us to just have one single image. So that's again image texture, shading tab, image texture, and then clip to make sure that it's just one image. Go back to UV editing, and then just make sure that it is rotated. So we do is okay, If it's not cooperating, what we can do is rotate the head. So do this, press tab, rotate, then R, then Z to rotate. And that should give us a weird looking head. But no frets. There are ways for us to make it look way better. Just adjust, adjust, and adjust until we get it right. So it does look a bit derpy right now. SX scale. And that should give us a face. Hooray. He's pretty much done at this point, and we have 9 minutes to go. Perfect. So now, if you can see, our little Servbot buddy is pretty much done. But the thing is, how do we sort of like make any use of him, right? Like, okay, he's done. We just press Control J to join everything together, and that should be our model. That should be our model. We're done. Hooray! Now, at this point in the tutorial, what I wanted to do was to like teach you guys how to do animations and then have them imported into Unity. But unfortunately, that probably will have to be another tutorial or another workshop on its own, simply because there's just so much to cover in terms of animating and importing to Unity. But what I can show you right now is how it would exactly work in Unity when imported and properly animated and rigged, and also, of course, programmed to work. So, right now, what I'd want you guys to do is, if you guys have sort of like Unity installed, in any case, it's fine if you don't as well, but I'll be showing you here on my screen. So I'll just stop streaming now that we have our little guy here. Stop streaming. And I can just show you what it looks like on Unity. Okay, so now Unity is loading. Does anyone have any questions or clarifications that you want to ask? Okay, in any case, we'll just wait for it to load. Oh, Unity is loaded. And wait, why won't it? Okay, let me just share my screen then. If it's not showing Unity. Can you guys see my screen? Unity should be here.
Yeah, I can see it.
Okay, cool. So, this is Unity with our little buddy properly imported and rigged and animated. I've also written a script that will allow the player to move. If you guys are interested, we could also have another sort of tutorial on this thing, which is just a basic sort of player movement in Unity. But I'll probably send like a link to this tutorial. I just saw this on YouTube. But yeah, it's just a simple script that allows to control a character. So when I press play, for example, you can see he has a little idle animation there. He's kind of just standing, and he's kind of just idling. Doesn't he look cute? And so that is basically what 3D modeling can afford us. It's just allow us to import to Unity or to any game engine that we desire with just simple, like, I don't know, 3D modeling skills, the basics, just dragging, dropping, and adding on basic shapes. And if we have any kind of like sort of, if we're also able to program that into the game, and so we can also make it move like such. So what I have set up here is like a simple Resident Evil style camera system, where it's kind of just following you, and you can run, and like you can just run and just do whatever. You can see him doing a little animation, and he can't jump because I was too lazy to program that. But in any case, this is how you like animate and sort of this is how you can 3D model a character and sort of I don't know make it work in your video games. I'd probably love to do like another tutorial or another workshop on like how I did this, but we would have like a 3-hour workshop if I were to do it now. But in any case, I have this you guys have this in the starter kit and you can play around with it. Just have fun and mess around, see how I actually got it to work. So yeah, that's pretty much the tutorial or the workshop. Thanks for tuning in. I'd be happy to just chill and like just answer questions and help anybody out with questions that they have. Thanks.
Thank you for the wonderful workshop.
Right, right.
It did great.
It
If
was
I
my
was,
honor to,
yeah,
you know, set it
it
up
was
for
my.
you guys.
I couldn't have thought. I couldn't have come up with a better person for the job.
Thanks.
Yeah, you did great.
Thank you. Thank you. But yeah,
So
guys, like don't be afraid to like open mic and just say anything. I don't really
I
mind.
think I'll end the recording here, if that's
yeah,
all right.
Sure.
that's fine.
Sure,
Okay.
sure.